Alright, let's do a formal review video of the Harbottle C18 subwoofer. I've had it in my hands for a few weeks and I got a whole lot of things to say about it. So in my quest to find subwoofers for my home theater, and amongst my research online and AVS Forum and other places, I was introduced to Harbottle Audio, a small company out of Canada that's primarily focused on subwoofers in their product line, although they do have some other home theater elements and are expanding that as well. So I thought their products looked interesting, and I was able to strike up a conversation with the folks and get one of their C18 model subwoofers in my hands for a demo and a formal review. These subs are all designed and built in Canada, handmade, and some of the parts and such are done in collaboration with Funk Audio. Now, Harbottle has a very distinct kind of strategic focus that they call LDLC, low distortion, low compression, and it's all about basically defining performance minimum standards and expectations and such for the subwoofers. I'll quote, LDLC is an engineering standard which consists of 5 fundamentals exercised within 4 principles of sound: distortion, compression, efficiency, and output. And now I want to talk more about the subwoofer than like a deeper technical dive into the concept of LDLC, but suffice to say this sets a very high bar and a very high standard for subwoofer performance. There's a whole bunch of information on the Harbottle webpage about these 5 fundamentals and the principles of sound, and the engineering and the technicalities that go into their products and into their designs and build and quality and construction and all of that with these concepts in mind. So I'll have the links down below in the description, and you'll find a plethora of information, tables, details, and so on about the concept of LDLC. But suffice to say, it's a design standard, a performance standard that these folks kind of live by across this subwoofer product line. So in terms of the C18 itself, we're talking about an 18-inch single front-firing sealed subwoofer. The default enclosure comes in the vertical orientation and stands about 26.5 inches high, about 22.75 inches wide, and roughly about 18 inches deep, and clocks in at a nice 86 pounds. Now, one of the unique material elements of these subwoofers is the fact that they're heavily based on carbon fiber. The driver itself is a solid carbon fiber cone handmade by Harbottle, and the enclosure is a birch plywood base that's turned into a carbon fiber composite, all handmade, all handcrafted and such. The materials, the plywood and the carbon fiber, are basically bonded together into a single entity. And just to be clear, like the carbon fiber element, it's not just a finish, it's not just a veneer or an overlay. It's a structural piece of the subwoofer itself, and really a main like stabilizing member of the entire composite enclosure that ends up getting created in their build and construction process. And what it does is essentially makes for very efficient energy transfer and very low resonance to help them accomplish the low distortion goals and meet the LDLC fundamentals that they're shooting for. The sub also comes with really advanced DSP controls with an Ethernet-based access and a PC or Mac app. But the one thing that I want to point out is that it's not necessarily a user-accessible app. The app is really there for service access and for another kind of unique element of the whole Harbottle purchasing experience. Hands-on themselves remotely tuning your subwoofer, and I'll talk about that in more detail coming up. But again, that app, it's not an end user tool, it's a service tool. The subs themselves don't have a plethora of inputs. It carries a dual XLR input for obviously a single subwoofer connection for an LFE, or if you're using like summed mono subwoofer signal in like a dedicated 2-channel or more musical listening environment, and you don't have an LFE out or a subwoofer output on your preamp, it gives you the ability to tie those 2-channel signals together and gives you flexibility for using the subwoofer essentially for home theater or also in a more fixed kind of music setting. Along with the C-Series comes a variety of build options as well. So they actually come in different levels of beastliness, I'll call it, that they call L1, L2, and L3. And as you go up from the 1 to the 3, you basically go up in the performance of the subwoofer and some of its other characteristics. Of course, it goes up in price as well to match. The L level also dictates the amplifier. So the L1, you're getting a 2.4 kilowatt amplifier, whereas on the higher L levels, it's a 4.4 kilowatt amplifier. So pretty big difference in power. but that feeds in again to the different tuning and the different characteristics of the subwoofer between these performance levels. And you also have a choice. The DSP control interface, the knobs, the dials, and the readout can be placed either on the front of the subwoofer if you want easy access to it, or on the back if you'd prefer to have that kind of hidden from the facial field of view of the unit itself. I can also mention too, the default config, as I said, is a vertical orientation. They do have an option for horizontal. So if you don't have the clearance but you have more width to be able to place one of these subwoofers, you can get it in either the horizontal or the vertical stack. Now in terms of what I did with the subwoofer and what I was using it with, I did have this in my hands for several weeks, and I was using it as a single sub in my home theater setup, 19 by 17 by 11 foot approximate dedicated treated theater room. I was using it essentially with a 7.1.4 system, with that as the single sub, mixed in with the Focal 1000 in-wall series, and driven with my Anthem AVM 70 for all of the processing, and those Parasound Halo amps driving those Focals. For sources, I was predominantly using the Kaleidescape, along with some current gaming hardware, including my PC and the PlayStation 5, and then of course some Apple TV content also. When I was setting this up, I did start with the subwoofer in the front right corner of my room, kind of per Harbottle's recommendation, but I ended up actually kind of moving it over to the center, and so most of my critical listening, especially after having everything fully EQ'd and dialed in and ready to go, was with the subwoofer right in the middle of the front wall, below my screen essentially. I connected the subwoofer to the Anthem AVM 70 via a subwoofer XLR, just one single cable, and of course the subwoofer was wired on my Ethernet network for access for the tuning and the app control, and just a regular power cord plugged into the wall. And I did use the subwoofer with its auto sensing power on and off. I didn't do anything special in my Control 4 system or any other type of integration to control the power state, and power sensing worked fine, not a problem at all. In terms of calibration and equalization with the sub, in the end, all my EQ was basically done with Anthem Arc Genesis, using the later betas that had just recently come out that included the speaker delay and the subwoofer phase integration. Now, I did struggle a bit for actually a number of weeks trying to get this subwoofer meshed together and fully calibrated in my room with the Anthem. No fault to Harbottle. The problems and the pain points were really all introduced by the Anthem preamp. And after doing so, I did run the sub the entirety of the time on its no EQ DSP setting. It comes out of the box with about 5. There's a no EQ, there's a flat, there's a home theater, etc. About 5 preset EQ modes, and I did opt for the no EQ, trying to let the Anthem basically take care of all of that on its own. So just for reference, here is a raw measured curve of the sub's response in my room using the Arc Genesis quick measure. There's no processing, no filtering or anything being applied to that curve specifically. That's a full sweep. And of course, your results may vary. You will see some kind of unruliness or some waviness through the lower bass regions. That's not the subwoofer. And I did not measure the subwoofer. I didn't take it outside. I don't have the facility to do like very advanced measurements and stuff like, you know, Audioholics and some of the other channels do. So I'm showing you what this thing did in my room, and it was definitely being influenced from my room. So I want to say that very clearly. Your results might vary. My results are very specific to my room, and the idea of these like early peaks in these mid-bass nulls are present, I found, with multiple brands of subwoofers at different locations along the front of my room. It's just the characteristics that I'm dealing with. So take that into consideration. But you can see if you ignore that room variance and you see where this thing kind of would fall, it's pretty substantial subwoofer. So here next is the filtered curve. After having done all of the Anthem measurement, curve fitting, calibration and such for the curve that I ran for all of my demoing purposes and review purposes and content and so on. So as you can see, it tracked very nicely. Anthem was able to do its job and work with the subwoofer, dial it in, mix it in to the rest of the speakers, applied the speaker phase integration and all of that stuff with the rest of the system. So happy results in the end with Anthem Arc, but only after that new beta came along. In terms of calibration though, I don't want to understate the value of the whole remote tune kind of feature or service that's offered with these and offered by Harbottle Audio as part of buying a C-series subwoofer. And I think it's one of the most kind of unique and value-added options of this series and like what this company is doing. So basically, folks from Harbottle will get online with you in a call, you screen share, and they can measure and tune the subwoofer with all of their expertise, all of their knowledge about the product and its operation and so on. So what do you need for this? Well, you need a microphone, some kind of an Omni mic. A Dayton Omni mic is generally what they've recommended. Of course, you need a computer to connect that microphone to. You need the subwoofer, of course, connected via Ethernet to your local network. You need the DSP software loaded, and as I mentioned, it's available for Mac or PC. You can get it right off of the web pages. It's no problem getting it. But again, it is a service tool, so it's not a piece of software that you would be using as an end user kind of regularly for the subwoofer. You would install it and use it in facilitation of kind of this remote tuning. And then, of course, some video conferencing software that allows you to connect and share screen and give control over to somebody. So as I was fighting with the earlier Anthem software, I did actually get online with the Harbottle folks, I think on two or three occasions, to try to do some tuning and get the subwoofer dialed in conjunction with trying to work around the issues with ARC, thinking that, well, if we can get the subwoofer's curves brought down and such without having to just like neuter the input gain, then I would be able to run ARC for the rest of my system and everything would integrate well. I'll say that I was completely impressed by a couple things that I saw as I was working with those folks and watching them do what they did. And I'm fully confident that given the right time and the right tools, that like what these folks could do with the subwoofer would just probably be exceptional. Again, that full remote tune would be much more involved in a dialing in process and achieve better results than we were able to accomplish because of fighting some of the problems with the Anthem. A couple of things I did note though is there's far more DSP control that they have in the software and in the app than available with a lot of normal subwoofers for an end user. A lot of subs tend to offer just a simple PEQ, and you can set a Q value, you can set a frequency, and you can set a gain for that point, and maybe, you know, subwoofer might let you do 3, 5, 7, or 10 points. But within the software, the Harbottle folks were able to set several different kinds of filters, shelves and different passes and high passes and low passes. And so they have a much more of an engineering level control in this remote tune sequence, again, than a lot of other subwoofers let you manage as an end user. And of course, they have the experience and the knowledge and such to do that in conjunction with the sub, to harness all of that power and to do it in a way that's not going to blow something up or whatnot. But again, this is a service menu. But you have, when you're doing the remote tune directly with the Harbottle folks, of course, the right folks are doing the work to get the most kind of out of that subwoofer. So again, in a normal remote tune, there's a whole lot of specificity that will go in to dialing in that subwoofer to your room, integrating it with your mains and your other speakers, and also trying to take into consideration like your specific tastes, what kind of content you might be using it for. The subwoofer itself actually, in addition to kind of the 5 default equalization settings that you can just set, allows saving up to like another 80 slots. And so the folks at Harbottle kind of indicated that, yeah, some folks, they'll set up different tunes for different types of content. Maybe you've got a music and a movies and a games, or even certain types of movies, right? It's really kind of only limited by time. And so you can have very specific content focused or genre focused, whatever that might be, specific tunes and presets and profiles that are very easy to call up and such as a result of working through this remote tune process with them. All right, so what did I listen to? What did I put the subwoofer through in its paces of evaluation and such after having kind of everything set in the calibration set and the integration all set? So pretty much all the movies that I watched were again off the Kaleidescape, and a lot of it ended up kind of being full movies that we watched anyway. Ended up being family movies. I'm not a full-time dedicated reviewer. I'm working my day job during the day. So, you know, I do what I can to get in my theater space, and a lot of times it ends up being kind of family time as well. But we did watch Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, watched the entirety of Addams Family 2, and we also watched Sing 2 as kind of the main 3 movies that we were able to put on the subwoofer after it was all set and dialed in. In addition to that, I was able to get in the room and do a bunch of kind of scene-specific demoing So I watched that A New Hope Death Star scene a whole bunch of times when the Death Star blows up and that massive rumble that comes out as a result. I watched that Ready Player One race scene more times than I can count, both for this review and other tinkering and stuff that I've been doing in the space. So that was kind of a key one. I also pulled up Fury, and using the scene, the preset scene features of the Kaleidescape, there's two scenes that I spent some time with. There's one kind of, I think, earlier in the movie where there's a tank battle along like a forest line. And then there's another scene, which I think is later on, or maybe towards the end. I haven't actually watched the whole movie myself, where the American tank squadron is fighting against that one, like German, the bigger German tank. So those two sequences were really good. And then I tried a couple of opening scenes. The Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow opening with that massive bass tone. And then the other one in the booms that come with the beginning of Blade Runner 2049. I didn't do a whole lot of music listening discreetly, but some minorly. But a lot of the music experience I would say that I got out of the subwoofer for evaluation really came from watching Sing 2. Obviously, you know, if you've watched Sing, it's a movie about singers putting on a show. So there's a whole lot of singing, a whole lot of music. Of course, you know, lossless audio and all that with the Kaleidescape. So I kind of treated that as my litmus test for music, as there was a variety of different songs and such used in the score and the soundtrack of that movie. I put a little video gaming time on it as well. God of War 2018, kind of jumping back and forth between both my PC and the PS5, and I played a little bit of the latest Ratchet and Clank game as well on the PlayStation 5. So all in all, I demoed quite a bit. Individually, I had a few movies and demoed a bit with my family and my kids, and I ended up with a couple of occasions as well where we had friends over, say, hey, come on in, I'm going to fire something up for you. Check out this subwoofer. And we had a larger family party as well, where I had a bigger group of folks in the room, some uncles, my dad, and so on, and gave them all a taste of what this subwoofer could do. So it was interesting to watch folks listening to this thing dialed up, you know, cranked up in that Ready Player One race scene and such. So some fun experimentation had by all. All right, so after all those demo scenes and all that time spent listening to it, what did I think? And I would just say, wow. This is what I would call a capable and refined beast of a subwoofer. If I were to think about sound as like a tower, right, or a skyscraper building, so to speak, and you know your high frequencies were the top of that thing, and your bass was the foundation. You know, some combinations or integrations of speakers and subwoofers may be more like kind of a straight stack, but to me this thing felt not quite maybe like a pyramid at the very top, but definitely the foundation of the subwoofer was so strong in basically everything that I played, whether that was the music in Sing, whether that was the big explosions or the smaller rat-a-tat-tat and machine guns or whatever in Fury, or the video games and so on. Like, this thing was always there and just always present and creating this foundation of sound that everything else could basically work off of and sit on top of. And so it was a different experience, and definitely different in some ways than what I like acoustically remember when I had the RELs, the 12-inch RELs in the room, and even switching back and forth a bit between the Arundels. So again, like the C18, it was the best explanation I can give is it's like just absolutely present, and it anchors that low frequency sound in a way that was just like exciting and visceral and just always there, but still very refined for those quick bursts and those quick hits. You can feel that wave go through, shake the couch, you know, just like a bass shaker. My theater room is in a basement, so I'm sitting on the cement slab of the floor, and two of my exterior walls, you know, they're framed 2x4, 2x6 and drywall construction, but on the back side of two of those walls is the concrete foundation walls. And so that takes a lot, but man, I could just still feel that, right? Feel that bass kind of coming through. And so in terms of some specifics, like the tank shots in Fury and the gunfire and those explosions, it just pops, pop, pop, pop. And jumping around, shooting and throwing bombs and stuff in Ratchet, again, every one of them just always there, always present, underpinned. Like the underpinning of the bass it was something to something to experience. And like Ready Player One, oh my gosh, like everybody that I put the Ready Player One scene on through the subwoofer was just like smiling. It's like being on a roller coaster ride, right? Explosions, Kong, jumping, slamming, everything's there, super tactile, super present, and just, you know, foundationally there. Death Star explosion, I'm sure if I really let it go, I could rattle the neighbor's house with the Death Star. I definitely can send that base power, you know, up and out of the basement and through the remainder of this house. So, you know, Star Wars, phenomenal scene at the end, of course, and boom. I've never heard it in any of my theater spaces. Maybe put it this way: in any of my theater spaces, I've never heard the Death Star blow up quite like with the Harbottle C18. Adam's Family didn't have a whole lot kind of through the movie, which as I was watching, like, oh, maybe we should have picked something else. But at the end of that movie, there's a fight scene in the lab, and the one doctor guy gets mutated and the other mutated guy, and they're big and they're stomping around, and so that one kind of came in at the end. And again, I think that the sub just kind of provided the foundation for the entirety of the bass response and the tactile feel of that fight scene. Sing 2, just excellent. A lot of people talk about, well, is a subwoofer musical? Is it not musical? Is it fast? And I think in many ways, like, those concepts and some of that hyperbole is somewhat true, and it kind of somewhat gets refuted. All I can say is that I think the subwoofer was an excellent, it performed great in Sing 2. The music, particularly some of the more bass-heavy music, and the beats and the tones and stuff that were coming in here through the soundtrack of that film, and the performances of the characters and so on, always there, underpinned strong, underpinned great. And so nothing that I tried I would call bad in any way. Nothing slow, nothing muddy. And when I talk about the subwoofer being present, like, I don't feel like it overstayed too long. I felt like it was just naturally there, and it would come in and it would do its work, and then it would, you know, as the scene changed or the audio toned down, it would move on, and it just hit right. It felt so strong, that presence, that underpinning. Kind of rambling a little bit now, but in any case, the one thing that I didn't unfortunately grab was any B-roll of the sub working. Of course, one of the things that's big about the Harbottle is this is like a large excursion subwoofer. It's got something like greater than 3 inches of movement, but there were a couple times where I was demoing with friends where I grabbed my phone out and I turned the flashlight on and we took a look at that driver, and man, don't get too close to it. Watching that thing do its job was as impressive as like the stuff that was going on actually on the screen. It's pretty wild. Unfortunately, I didn't grab any of it on video though. So what I would say then is Harbottle's making some pretty tremendous stuff with handcrafted design and manufacturing and the unique materials with the carbon fiber and so on. And I think it's they have an interesting future ahead of them. They've already started to actually make some speakers in the same design sense as the C-Series subwoofers, and there's more options and more customizations coming as I understand it. I really think the whole hands-on, customer-specific handling, the remote tune, all of that stuff. So if you have a specific need, or you're looking at some of their products and you're wondering or thinking about, well, maybe if this could be done or could this be done, call them up and ask. You're talking about a company that's like hand-making, handcrafting, kind of everything they do, and so there's a lot of flexibility involved with that. And if you have some specific needs, you know, call them up and see. They might just be able to meet them. And so I'm definitely enamored with the subwoofer. It's a pretty awesome beast, a refined beast as I would call it. I think the build quality is just impeccable. The design language with the faceted edges and all that, materials, craftsmanship, everything with my hands-on experience of this thing is just aces. So a few things I learned in conjunction with my time with this thing. When I first called those folks up and I was shopping subwoofers and thinking about subwoofers, I definitely got swept up in the idea of like, oh yeah, I want like 3 or 4 subwoofers, and so, you know, maybe let's talk about like getting three C18s and so on. And they kind of like very tactfully chuckled and recommended, like, why don't you try one? Start with one. Go ahead and let's send you one. We'll set up to do this demo in the review and so on. And yeah, so so my theater is dedicated. It's treated. And I've got a little insulation in the walls. We've got some underlayment between the floors of our house and so on. But my room was definitely not constructed to be a theater. It's not braced. It's not. It's just a room. And so this one C18 absolutely had enough power and potential energy to just like completely dominate my space and beyond the rest of the house too. If this thing was set to like, go to the nines and run free and run unfettered. The first time that I got it set up and I hooked everything up, no equalization or anything, just running completely raw. And I fired up that Ready Player One demo scene and I cranked it up and I was sitting down here. It was during the day, earlier in the day on a weekend or whatever. And I came upstairs and everybody's like, what just happened? Like, we're just like, there's dinosaurs. And it's like, oh, you guys heard all that, huh? Just like I did downstairs. Multi-sub is great, and it provides a lot of benefits, but the potential energy available in just one of these things is far more than like even my room can handle. So as a result of this, I now know like kind of where all my loose joints and all my room rattles and such come from. I never really identified them very much before with the RELs, but this thing had the power and the energy to excite kind of a whole lot of stuff. So the soffit in the back of my room, there's some HVAC ducting in there. This thing could rumble that stuff. When that Death Star went off, again, full volume, kind of unfettered, boom. It's like somebody dropped a plane of sheet metal on the floor. Shaking the little door stopper pieces that are on the hinges of my the entry door, and the recessed can lights with their like aluminum or kind of metal frame. Yeah, I know now I'm gonna have to get like some felt or something and kind of between the metal and the ceiling, and because if I go base heavy in my space, well, this thing helped me find all of those weak points and so on. And again, just an amazing amount of potential energy, stored in this thing. I couldn't even imagine like a C24. I know there's so many folks out there with pictures of their spaces and other home theater folks around, and they've got just like these massive subwoofers. It always cracks me up. People have like this little TV and they got a centers channel and speakers, and then they got subwoofers that are like boom, and like 2 or 3 of them. You know what you like, and you're living it up. That's awesome. Like these subs absolutely have like more power than even my space could maintain unfettered. And that's why you want to do the equalization. That's why you want to get things set up and dialed in right, so that you're getting nice smooth responses and you're kind of not wasting, right? You're not wasting the energy, but you have the reserves for when the right moments in the movie hit. A couple times, the biggest moments of the movie, this thing can deliver, and it can deliver the right way. So a couple other personal takes, I would say, and honestly, I just really don't have anything to fault. Like when it comes to like anything related to the quality or the performance that I experienced with this thing in my room. So the next couple of things that I'll mention are really just considerations, kind of based on personal taste or preference. But if they matter to you, I figured I'd mention them. So the one thing is the C18 in its vertical orientation is pretty tall. So I had this sitting again in the center of the room, and I have my screen a couple feet-ish off the floor, but the height of the vertical C18 was enough to get in to the screen image. So if you were planning to use a subwoofer like this in a configuration like that, be aware this one is definitely on the taller side and such. So thankfully they do offer the horizontal orientation. So if I were to use it, like permanently kind of in that way, the horizontal sub would definitely be the better choice, bringing it down and adding the width and kind of sliding in better that way. But I will say too, the vertical orientation actually suits itself also very nicely to going into a corner. It's not, it doesn't have the footprint of a fixed box. It's a little wider in the front than it is in the back, so it kind of tapers, which just very naturally makes for setting this thing into a corner, kind of firing out on like the 45-degree angle and working really well. So depending on your placement, give a thought maybe to which orientation might kind of suit you best. The other thing I'll say is I think the subwoofer looks great. As it comes by default, it's kind of like a medium gray color, and it has that carbon fiber, not really texture, but like pattern, right, of that material. However, I wasn't aware of this earlier, but Harbottle does offer multiple color options. So you can pick from other colors and other sheens and such. There may be additional costs for some of that as well, But if you wanted to get more of a black matte or some other type of glossy finish, talk to them, call them up. You can opt to get that. So if you have the subwoofer, of course, in an exposed space, you have some options and some customizations to kind of achieve the look, color, and level of gloss and shine or whatnot that you might need. And then lastly, the driver of the subwoofer is 100% exposed. There's no cover provided, and from what I was told, they basically don't provide a cover on purpose. As I said, this driver has something like greater than 3 inches of movement, 3 inches of stroke, so this thing can move a lot of air, and essentially a cover is not physically practical, as I understand it. So either the type of cover that would be needed to not just get like blown off with that type of movement would need to be engineered in a way that it would affect the audible performance of the subwoofer. So by design intent, there's no cover. And so, the driver looks really cool, and the carbon fiber texture and pattern essentially kind of that driver shows through. And I think it does look, it looks neat in its own right. But just something to keep in mind if you're putting the subwoofer out in open space and you need it covered up or significant other acceptance factor, that sort of thing, it is an exposed driver. Kids or cats and whatever else might be in your environment. I feel like in general too, though, just anecdotally, looking at new speakers that have been announced and going up for sale and subwoofers, like more and more, I feel like everything is shown and maybe in some cases sold like without covers. So it feels like there's a kind of a shift, and taking the covers off of everything is the way stuff is being designed nowadays. But in any case, that's the situation here. And so, final thoughts. I just want to say thank you to the folks at Harbottle for reaching out to me. I've had some long discussions with their technical director and chatted a bit. We've been texting, got to know them a little bit, and cool guys. I think the company is great. I'm excited to watch what they do in the future. It's a smaller brand right now. They've got some big plans and more product and whatnot coming. I think this thing was pretty phenomenal. I had never had the opportunity to have something like this in my home theater space, and again, I'm not like a 20-year home theater journalist. I've used the things that I've bought and owned over the years, and so I haven't had like 25 subwoofers come through my hands over the last decade and whatnot. And this is definitely the single most powerful piece of equipment that I've had the pleasure of using in a space. So I learned a ton about kind of what my tastes are, what I like, and how the performance of different types of equipment, functions in a room and plays. So this was a real cool opportunity. I just want to say again, thanks to Harbottle. Thank you for watching. And if you're looking for a really beastly subwoofer that comes with a next level of service and support and commitment and craftsmanship and all of that sort of thing, reach out to these folks. Put them on your short list. Call them up and have a conversation. But for now, the Harbottle C18 is packed up. It's been picked up, and it's on to its next demoer and reviewer. And so sad to see it go in many ways, for sure. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please ask. Post away in the comments. I would expect the Harbottle folks to kind of keep an eye on this video. And if you have questions to pose to them directly, put them in the comments, and they might be able to reply, or get in touch through there. So please like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, look down in the description for some ways to support the channel, and thank you so much for watching. And I'll be talking more about kind of my subwoofer experience in general as we go into the future vlogs and what I'm using and so on. So stick with the channel. There's always going to be more home theater stuff to do. Thanks.